Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to talk about Chainlink. We're going to be looking to see where on course it is, how it's faring against USD, how it's faring against Bitcoin and Ethereum. I figured we might as well continue along with doing a video update on Link approximately every 2 weeks. So if you guys want to make sure you get those updates approximately every 2 weeks, then make sure you subscribe to the channel. Let's go for 150,000 subscribers. Also give the video a thumbs up and turn on your alerts if you want notifications of future videos. Let's go ahead and jump in. So we haven't shown this chart actually on the channel in a while, and in fact I refit it because we have a lot more data. Now this yellow line is fit to all data. It's not fit to quote unquote non-bubble data, it's just fit to all data. So this more or less shows our theoretical fair value. And of course we can spend a decent amount of time above what we might consider to be the fair value. Whether it means going to the red band or whether it means being completely undervalued and going back to the green band. Now, right now, we're up in the $25 range or so. And there are a lot of people, I get a lot of messages of people who are somewhat discouraged with Link because it isn't performing as well as some other cryptocurrencies. Again, you have to consider that it's more than 10x above its prior all-time high from 2018. So in fact, it is doing quite well. And it also, we know that it tends to perform best when the rest of the market is not. So imagine phases where a lot of cryptocurrencies are just more or less moving sideways, maybe bleeding slightly. This is when Link does the best. So I would say Link does in fact stand the test of time. You just have to be patient with it, and normally it does come through in the clutch. So in this video, one of the things we're going to cover is when might Link go on an amazing surge, okay? Now I'll sort of introduce my initial thought on that now, and that is, well, first of all, it'll probably happen whenever Bitcoin cools off. You might say, well, that's a cop-out answer, and maybe you're right. But if we were to look at Bitcoin and look at prior cycles, there's a decent chance that Bitcoin does calm down at some point over the next few months. We've seen fairly impressive moves by Bitcoin in the past in Q1. I wouldn't really be that surprised to see Bitcoin cool off in Q2, maybe even Q3. If that happens, then we might get a surge in the price of Link this summer. If you look back, actually the last two major peaks for Link against USD happened in the summer. Last year it happened in July. The year before that, I believe it happened a little bit earlier in the summer, maybe in like May, June timeframe. So with that in mind, I would assume that Link will probably not do super well against Bitcoin until Bitcoin volatility calms down. And of course, this is probably going to take weeks or months before Bitcoin volatility will calm down. The chances that Bitcoin just goes to 58K and then settles in at 46K and goes sideways for 2 or 3 months is not likely. It's probably not that high. Now that I've said that, that's probably what it'll do. But just in my experience, you don't get a major surge in the price of Bitcoin and then it just sits still. I mean, you'll a lot of times you'll get a decent correction, and then it'll consolidate, or it'll continue pushing up. The chances that it just goes sideways at say 50K or 46K for 3 months is likely not that high. However, we have said similar stuff before, and then Bitcoin went sideways. Okay, so we have to be a little bit flexible there. Now, Link is at $25, and if you look to the top of this regression band here, we can see that a $100 Link would fall in line right here. And if we continue moving up at this pace off and on, I don't think a $100 Link is necessarily off the table in 2021. Of course, it will depend on the overall market conditions. And a lot of times for Link, it actually means you don't want the other cryptocurrencies to be doing that well for Link to do well. In fact, if history is any indication, which it's not always the greatest indication, but if it is an indication, then Link would do better if Bitcoin was not doing well. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind that we want Link to do well, but it might not start really doing amazingly well until Bitcoin volatility calms down. You can see that Bitcoin is still above its 20-week moving average, color-coded in blue. This is when major Link moves happen against USD. When Bitcoin's below its 20-week moving average, Link is trending sideways against USD, or maybe slightly, here it actually trended slightly up. But Bitcoin being above its 20-week doesn't necessarily need to be going up. It could just be trending sideways above its 20-week, but generally indicating a bullish market. This is when Link tends to do very well. Now, if we continue on, we can look at one of these charts. This is our Link Bitcoin chart. This is a linear scale, And we've fit this before. We've identified quote unquote non-bubble data, fit it to an exponential fit, said it probably won't last forever. It lasted for a year, I believe, before we dropped below it. But even here, I don't think it's worthwhile to completely stop looking at this fit, because it could just be that in the same way we have link bubbles against Bitcoin, little bunny hills off the exponential fit, this is a bubble of Bitcoin against Link. So we always said Link, we know how well Link performs against Bitcoin in a bull market or in a bear market and an accumulation phase. We do not know if it'll be able to keep pace in a bull market. So far it is not, but whenever Bitcoin volatility calms down, we'll probably have a few more gray hairs by the time that happens. That is when I think Link will do well against Bitcoin, and probably not a moment before. On any given day, we can see surges. Bitcoin or Link can go to $35 again, $45, $55. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about maybe a more substantial move up to $100 Link or something. So for that to happen, we probably want to see Bitcoin volatility reduce down significantly. Now this shows the Link Bitcoin valuation on a log scale just for completeness, and you can see how well it has trended against this line. It has fallen down recently, but it's pulled back up a little bit, so we'll see if in fact Link can get back on track. Here we're looking at the Link valuation against USD based on whether Bitcoin's above or below its 20-week moving average. Again, when Bitcoin is above it, Link does really well, goes exponential, a 10x, another modest 10x, another 10x and more, because Bitcoin has not dropped below. When it drops below, Link goes sideways, or maybe it goes up and back down, or down and back up, but it doesn't put in exponential gains or go parabolic or anything similar to that when Bitcoin's below the 20-week. So what we want is Bitcoin to be above the 20-week, but moving sideways. So generally bullish market conditions, but diminished Bitcoin volatility. Now, if you look at the Link Bitcoin chart, you can see that it historically has just trended up no matter what Bitcoin's doing, except for now when Bitcoin's been in a bull market. The bull market arguably started here, and since then we've sort of fallen off this trend that we were on. Doesn't mean we can't get back on it, but it could mean that we are changing the trend as we've entered into a bull market. Now this is one of people's favorite charts. It shows the risk of Link Bitcoin. So this is the Link Bitcoin risk metric. We showed this video over here. We said, this is a great time, historically speaking, to get in. It then went up a lot. We were starting to reduce back down. There's the 5 main coins that I cover on this channel are Bitcoin, Ethereum, Link, ADA, and DOT. And I like those coins because I feel like they give me adequate exposure to the market. I do hold a few other coins, but those are the main 5 that I hold. Those are the ones that I have the largest positions in. Link right now is probably one of the ones that has at least in terms of its Bitcoin risk, it's fairly low. The risk level on it is a lot lower than we've seen it historically be. So one of the common questions I get is, well, if you're new to the market, how do you get in? Well, a lot of times you might just consider DCAing into the market, but you need to have a long outlook, not financial advice, of course. We know the market is pretty heated right now, so no one would be surprised with a pullback. But if you're looking at something like Link and you're looking at it here and you're saying, well, over the macro scale, this phase has historically been a great time to get in, you might just take that into consideration. Now, if you look at the risk on the secondary y-axis, we can note there are 3 major times when we went to the 0.9 to 1 risk band. We've gone to the 0.8 to 0.9 risk band a couple more times, but to the 0.9 to 1 risk band has only mainly happened these 3 times. We used this risk metric back in the summer to help time the peak within about 2 days or so. In fact, we got really lucky. And now it's come down significantly. But remember, the people who benefit the most up here are the people who had the resolve to continue focusing on Link when it was down here. We've said before, bull markets can make you money, bear markets can make you rich, right? Right now, even if you've been investing in Link over the last couple weeks, or say since January or December, you probably have done pretty well. In December, Link capitulated to $8 at one point, and it's still at $25 or $26 at the time of this video. So it's not that you can't make money in bull markets, it's just that in bear markets, you can make a lot more money. Okay, and you could argue that Link against Bitcoin is in a bear market, which is kind of weird to think about, right? When we know that crypto is in a bull market, but the Link valuation against Bitcoin right now is in a bear market. If we look at a lot of different metrics, which we'll look at in this video. Now, I'd be a patzer if I didn't at least show the ROI, the return on investment, as measured from inception. You can see that Link has stood the test of time and has actually surpassed Ethereum's ROI after the same amount of time. Okay? Now, you might say, well, a couple things to be fair about with Ethereum. Ethereum went on a major run that actually put in higher returns than Link currently has earlier on. That's one thing to consider. Well, another thing to consider is that Link was not part of a 2-year bull market yet, which it's part of one now, and look at what it's doing. It's continuing its uptrend that it was already on, and Ethereum's back on an uptrend. Okay, to be fair to Ethereum, we also have to point out that after launch, Ethereum immediately capitulated and then continued higher. So if we shifted this over here, then the Ethereum ROI would actually be much higher. However, to some degree, we're manipulating data at that point. Maybe we'll look at that in another video. But at this point, we can say that if we look at the normalized ROI, Link is doing really well. And at the same point, if all you looked at was, okay, after approximately 1,250 days after inception, Link had a better return on investment had you bought on the day of launch than Ethereum did. So Link is doing very well, and it does stand the test of time. Here it is on a log scale for those who want to take a look. Now, we have to pull up TradingView. Okay, we have followed this bubble that formed as it formed, and one of the things I want to remind you of is the textbook bubble. So this is what it looks like. Okay, and you can see that generally speaking, we have followed along fairly well, right? We had, the mean, maybe the first sell-off, media attention, enthusiasm, public greed, delusion, new paradigm, denial, return to normal in the dead cat bounce, fear, capitulation, and despair, and then the return to the mean. So we talked about this possibility. I said there's a decent chance that Link does not immediately go back up here, but in fact, the probability is higher that it just returns to the mean, and that could just be sort of going along this curve right here. I don't know how far below it we could go, but generally speaking, the mean, that returning to the mean could look something like this. Basically, just a continuation of what we saw over here, and maybe that'll go on for a little while before seeing a crazy move against Bitcoin again. This is a linear scale. If you look at it on a log scale, it does look a bit different. Here you can see the reason why I said that Link is in a bear market against Bitcoin is because a lot of times I use the 20-week SMA and the 21-week EMA as one indicator of a bull market. Right now, we tried to hold support on it, failed to, and Link against Bitcoin has been in a bear market ever since. We had a nice surge up, and then it got rejected. So until we get above the 20-week moving average, it's probably going to still feel like things are bearish for the Link Bitcoin valuation. To get to the 20-week moving average today, the Link valuation against Bitcoin, we need to go to approximately 68,000 Satoshis, which from the current valuation, to go to 68,000 Satoshis or so, would represent a 25 to 26% move against Bitcoin. Now, if you look at the Link Ethereum valuation, it's also in a bear market. We have not spent a ton of time below this, right? We spent most of our time above it. Now we're below it. So again, Link is pretty bearish against Ethereum right now, and that likely won't change until whenever Bitcoin volatility calms down. One possible scenario that I think we could foresee is, imagine Bitcoin is cooling off for a while, which I don't know if it will, but we've looked at our regression bands and that sort of stuff. So let's look at that really quick on Bitcoin just to sort of see where we are. Now, if this does end up being a local top for Bitcoin right here, we know that if you look at the last cycle, we had a major altcoin move approximately 2 weeks after during the dead cat bounce. I'm not saying this is a local top for Bitcoin. I'm just saying if it is, then maybe Bitcoin bleeds for a while, then has a nice little bounce, and then if it does cool off, Link could surge here. But what I'm arguing is that, let's suppose that it cools off for a while like this, it would be in this phase that I think Link could do very well against Bitcoin. And perhaps at that phase, that is when the Link Bitcoin valuation might actually get above its 20-week moving average if it hasn't already done it. So until that happens, Link will likely stay relatively bearish against Bitcoin and Ethereum. But whenever, it's crypto. We have cycles. The sentiment can change on a dime, and then before you know it, we're probably going to be heading back up. So Let's look at the Link USD valuation. Here we're actually in a bull market according to this metric because we held it as support for about 3 months from September through January, so more than 3 months. And now we're above it now. We had a wick down to it as well, but currently we are still riding above our bull market support band, which today ranges from 1784 up to 1956. Okay, so Link is still looking pretty good against USD, and I imagine that if the crypto market stays healthy, it'll slowly be dragged up from time to time, not necessarily making any significant moves on its own. So I don't necessarily think it'll make any significant moves against Bitcoin until Bitcoin volatility reduces. But if Bitcoin has, say, nice bounces like it did back in 2017, if it does something like this, then there's a decent chance we'll get a surge in the price of Link if that were to happen. Hopefully this video has been informative. If you guys like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel. We'll try to do some updates on Link approximately every 2 weeks or so, if not sooner. And if you want to be ready for those updates, subscribe to the channel and turn on your alerts so you'll be notified of future videos. I hope you guys enjoyed the content. We also have the premium list. You can lock in the sale price. You can find a link to that in the description below. Make sure you check it out, lock it in. You'll get access to a lot of exclusive content, including the TradingView indicators, right? Including some of these TradingView indicators that we look at quite frequently. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time. Bye.